in conversation. One can well imagine that there are paintings in the hall, deep, dreamy ones in calm frames, a Giorgione perhaps, or a crimson dark portrait by a follower of Titian, perhaps Paris Bourdon. Then one knows that there are flowers there, large. Astonished flowers that lie all day in deep, cool bronze bowls and sing fragrances. Idle flowers and idle people. 2, 3, or 5. Again and again the light stretches from the giant fireplace and begins to count them, but it always makes mistakes. At the very front by the fireplace, the princess leans in white next to the large samovar which wants to capture all the splendor. She is like a wild color sketch, dashed off in the storm of an idea or a whim, painted with shadows and light out of some genial impatience. Only the lips are more finely executed, as if everything else were only there for the sake of this mouth, as if a book had been made to write the quiet elegy of this smile on one of 100 pages. The gentleman from Vienna next to her leans forward a little in the broad Gobelin chair. "Your Serene Highness," he says, and something afterward that seems worthless to him. But the soft words, which mean nothing, pass over everyone like a warmth, and someone gratefully says, "Speaking German is almost like silence." And then men has time again for a while to think that there are paintings there, and which ones. Until Count St. Quentin, who stands by the fireplace, asks, "Have you seen the Madonna, Helena Paulowna?" The princess lowers her brow. "You won't buy her?" "It's a good painting," says the gentleman from Vienna, and becomes absorbed in his fine, feminine hands. And a German painter, who sits somewhere in the dark, hastily adds, "Yes, all could have it around. I mean in the living room or something." And after his words have completely faded, Helena Paulowna leans forward. "No," she says, and then sadly, "one would have to build an altar for it." Her words grope deep into the hall, like seekers. Pause. Then the princess makes a small, anxious movement and wants to help them find it. "Casimir, should I buy the Madonna?" From afar, a full Slavic voice comes to wonder. "You ask me." Pause. And Helena Paulowna asks for forgiveness. "Are you not an artist?" Answer. "Sometimes, Helena Paulowna, sometimes." If the silver clock hadn't struck now, the German painter would have answered. But yet the silver clock suddenly called out a whole lot, and so he gave up, especially since Count St. Content said, "By the way, is this your first winter in Venice, Helena Paulowna?" "Yes, but I can't imagine it was ever any different. It's strange. These old palaces are so touching in their trust. They have many memories, and sometimes it feels as if fun shares them all. Don't you?" So says the gentleman from Vienna and closes his eyes. He therefore does not see that Helena Paulowna smiles as she adds, "You are right. One thing especially, that wasn't a child here, one simply cannot comprehend. Think, often in the street or in gardens it happened to me that I had to wave to someone and tell them, 'I always played here as a child.' Or, 'I went to pray in this church, to this picture.' Odd lies." But then Casimir's voice approaches sadly. "And yet you never called anyone, Helena? Oh, who would have believed me, Casimir?" Pause. And softly Count St. Quentin muses. "Should one not lie in such cases? Simply out of longing," the gentleman from Vienna confirms. Out of beauty, Count St. Quentin feels. "It harms Noah," says the German painter, and suddenly stands up. Then Casimir begins. What pen has behind them is wrong anyway. "Do you believe, Count, that you were a boy in the Vendée, wild and impetuous? Do you think, sir, that it was Vienna that surrounded your first awakening? And you, sir, that this flat land you often speak of was truly the backdrop for its fairy tales? Do you know that? This castle, please, and this city and your heath there, were they not rather the borders of that land in which you lived deeply and intimately? Please, did your possession not end where the other began? Did your sun not always set when you perceived the real light? Did the silent figures within you not die with every word your father, for example, said to you? And things, did things not become worthless the moment you realized they didn't belong to you alone, but stood around so that anyone could touch and use them at will? Consider that, please. Weather doesn't slowly exchange all the genuine gold what has for paper notes. How, and finally, what has nothing but instructions instead of values. And if the big crash comes today or tomorrow, then one is a beggar, isn't that so? Pause. And then Helena Polona. It seems to me you haven't exchanged all your gold, Casimir. Perhaps, Helena Polona, it may be that I have. But this gold is not valid in life, you must know. It is out of circulation. One must have notes, and many of them. This makes the German painter impatient. Yes, yes, he says. There you hear it again. You are pessimists, you Slavs, incurable pessimists. We have overcome that. We love life, and our art comes right out of it. He takes a few steps towards the window and adds from there, a little softer. I do believe the gentleman must agree with me. You, Count, for the French have indeed taught us much about life. How? Well, and you in Vienna? Yes, yes, answers the gentleman with the delicate hands slowly. It is true. We in Vienna, we like to pretend we have everything. Life, and art, and Count Saint-Quentin sips his tea and is so preoccupied with the delicate cup that he doesn't get around to answering. As he sets it down, it sings to itself for a while. But the German painter is annoyed. He feels so let down and has the idea that he must save his cause at odd costs. So he begins. That's why you actually have no art, you Poles, and so on. Well, as for literature and such stuff, maybe. One can make beautiful poems out of Weltschmerz, and then sentimental music, Chopin. Tchaikovsky, of course. But I don't understand anything about that. As for painting, I mean modern. Oh, look at Vereshchagin. The painter waves him off. Or portraiture. We now have Pochvalsky in Vienna. The Viennese becomes quite eager in his effort to dampen the other's blunt assertion. He still wants to spread some amiability over it, and his hands tremble from it. But then Casimir already says, the gentleman is quite right. We have no art. Don't forget your Pantadeus, Count Saint Quentin admonishes. I am thinking precisely of him, and of the great Russians, and of Tetmadje and those fine young poets who make being sick so beautiful. You see, I am thinking of many. And what comes out is that we have arts, not art. Many longings and no fulfillment. Perhaps it is different with the Germans, I don't know. But then the Germans must be very happy. The princess has turned away from the fireplace. Her eyes call into the darkness. And the German painter feels, here we go again, another conversation that leads nowhere. This intellectualism is a dreadful thing. And yet all things are so clear, as long as Len doesn't stir them up. And he remains silent, so as not to prolong the matter. If only the gentleman from Vienna hadn't asked, what do you mean by that? Then it would have been over. But of course he asks, what do you mean by that? Casimir doesn't answer immediately, and Princess Helena Polona has time to fold her hands. Then soft words again emerge from the darkness. Every now and then a step is heard, as if the Pole wanted to accompany some particularly anxious word a little way into the hall. Something like this. We've talked about this before, please. Art is childhood, you see. Art means not knowing that the world is already there and making kun. Not destroying what you find, but simply find nothing finished. Nothing but possibilities. Nothing but desires. And suddenly being fulfillment, being summer, having sun, without talking about it, involuntarily, never finishing. never having the seventh day, never seeing that everything is good. Dissatisfaction is youth. God was too old in the beginning, I think. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped on the evening of the sixth day, and not on the thousandth day. Not even today. That's all the reason I have against him, that he could give up, that he found his book finished with man, and now has laid down his pen and waits to see how many editions it will have. That he wasn't an artist, that's so sad. That he wasn't an artist after one could weep over that, and lose courage for everything. Then the silver clock chimes in, bright, hesitant, with a little tremor in its voice. They let it finish, and behind it the pole begins, quite involuntarily, softer and more secretly. A song, imagine, a picture you recognize, a poem you love. All of that has its value and meaning. I mean, for the one who makes it for the first time and for the one who makes it for the second time, for the artist and for the truly discerning viewer. For it is so. The sculptor, for example, makes his statue for himself alone. But, and this is the added value of his work, he also creates space for it in the world alongside other thing, and only he who is able to reproduce the image within this space by his own power truly possesses it in truth and in spirit. The fireplace glow begins to dim. Behind the golden grates the broad pine logs collapse and scatter. It's a confusion, as if fantastic palaces were crumbling. And with the darkness the pole comes closer, bringing his ever softer words with him. Like children who are supposed to recite wishes, they are ashamed and beautiful. These things, then, song and poem and picture, are different from other thing. Please kindly understand this. They do not exist. They become anew each time. That's why they give endless joy, this power, this awareness of inexhaustible treasures that comes from nowhere else. That's why they lift us up. Yes, they do. They lift us high up to God. The Count of St. Quentin makes a movement as if to make room for a word. The gentleman from Vienna is also on the verge of speaking. He reads intently in his hands, but Casimir hasn't noticed any of this, nor that the German painter is busy placing his fingers on a small ebony elephant and teaching it to ride. A wretched pastime. Like in the countryside in rainy weather, something like that. Meanwhile, Casimir has long since begun, now at seas how his dark eyes awaken. Helena Paulowna, and now tell me yourself, please. Isn't that hopeless? Always only up to God, never through him, never beyond him, as if he were a rock, and yet he is a garden, if one may say so, or a sea or a forest, a very large meat, and everyone in the forest listens intently. The princess leans far, far forward towards the pole, as if she alone wanted his words, his words, including these that followed. So what do, Helena, so that it's not so sad, this, not so senselessly sad? Now tell me, Helena. You say, I listen. Perhaps you say that, Helena, only better, more radiantly than I can. What must, you say? What must begin where God left off? Where he grew tired, there on must start. Where is that, Helena, please? It's in life, in man, not in the many, but in the un-person who comes towards you from eternity, who brings you all that other thing, which you still need, never to be in want, to be able to begin carefree, lavishly. For it must not be, Helena, like a fleeting visit from person to person, and the world drifts by unconcerned. It must be a celebration, a jubilation, boundless. You have found an image for it, Helena, like this: two generals who meet on the heights, in a radiant land, in Jerusalem perhaps, in Egypt or on the Ganges, each with an army behind them, and each army half the world. Then Helena Paulowna rose. Tall. Silence. Two people stand facing each other. Two kings. For a moment it is as if in Jerusalem or on the Ganges. And the flames behind the golden grills also rise and cast their glow far and wide. The Count of St. Quentin has left his place by the fireplace, and is about to quietly withdraw. The gentleman from Vienna has slowly stood up, and the German painter has also suddenly understood. Ed must stand up at this moment. He is immensely astonished. They were just talking about art. Strange. And then he sits down again with a certain relief. One must speak, he thinks. For God's sake, quickly. One must speak. The first thing that comes to mind. He strains himself immensely. Nothing occurs to him but the poor little ebony elephant he has been training for the last 15 minutes. But it's impossible to suddenly speak of this elephant. Good heavens! Then he hears the Count of Saint-Quentin, in French. You must forgive me, Helena Polona, if I am guilty of this departure. And the delicate pendulum clock supports its countryman. It strikes some endless hour throughout the entire farewell, so that no one has to say anything. Not Casimir either. One cannot see his face, nor know if he is pale. But his eyes must be tired. One has that feeling. And his hand trembles and is heavy. He bows deeply to the princess, deeply. Then he leaves, like Ka who will not return to a beloved place. He hesitates with every step. He looks at all things with such serious eyes, attentively, so that he knows how everything was, Helena. Polana remains in front of the extinguished fireplace. She listens only the small silver clock, and it ticks breathlessly, breathlessly, as if it were chasing a second that is much, much faster. And then the princess reaches towards the fireplace for a small, old, golden bell, in whose handle tiny images are engraved. Helena Polana will order light, much light. The lover. Hermann Holzer paces back and forth in his long, narrow room, and has been speaking for half an hour. Ernst Bang has been lying on the old student sofa for just as long, observing him. Sometimes he lifts his head a little, as if to look past the other's words, for these do not particularly interest him. The broad, blond young man, who always walks up and down in the same spot, with steps as if he were climbing a hill, seems much more important to him clearly. He would most like to call out to him, "Please, just stand still for a moment so I can see your chin and your mouth more clearly." Of course, he doesn't call it out, but nevertheless Hermann Holzer stops, gathers himself in front of the narrow window and covers the sky, the chimneys, and the entire Sunday afternoon with his black back. The room darkens behind him, and he says, "To hell with the whole exam. I'm truly nervous, I think. I'm starting to compete with you, dear Bang. Beware. When I get nervous, I do it thoroughly, like everything. Then you'll be dwarfs compared to me." And he turns around so quickly that he pulls a whole piece of light into the smoky attic room with his laughter. Bang sits up as if startled. He is very slender and fashionably dressed. Now he slowly examines his left hand and then his right, with a certain eagerness, as if it were a reunion after years. Holzer is pacing again. Today I also need to hear back about whether I have a chance to take over Holmes' private lessons. A lot depends on that. Without that extra income, I can't even think about getting married. Bang makes a noisy movement. Holzer turns to him expectantly, but only receives a distracted, "Yes, of course," and continues pacing and speaking. I imagine that's when things will finally settle down. That's when one can start working on something sensible. Once you're provided for and have nothing to worry about. Pause. And Helene understands that. Pause. Of course, we'll live somewhere out in the country. He's back at the window. Bang's delicate lips resist a word. Then it turns inward and propels the young man to his feet. He stands perplexed for a moment before taking a few steps towards his friend. As he reaches him, Holzer is just saying, "Listen." A sad Slavic folk song drifts like smoke up the courtyard. It's as if the song were standing on tiptoes to look over roofs and towers somewhere. Bang involuntarily lifts his hat and closes his eyes. "Do you know what that is?" Holzer laughs. Pause. Then Bang muses to himself, Homesickness. Holzer shakes him. That little country bumpkin from down there is washing dishes. She always sings along, always the same song in that silly, washed-out voice, every afternoon at 3:30. Look, he holds out his watch. Punctual, right? Every time of day here is marked. I could easily set my watch by them. Hurdy-gurdy man, wire binder, vegetable man, rag woman. That's what I call my hours. And try to work amidst that. Plus, there's also a vis-a-vis dot look. Nice, isn't she? Hermann Holzer blows a few kisses, and from his satisfied smile, one can conclude they don't fall into the courtyard. Then he suddenly turns back into the room. That's why Un should marry as soon as possible. Bang makes a gesture of defense. Hermann Holzer notices it, looks at him for a moment, and takes a cigarette from the table. Don't you want Un, Bang? Thanks. And Holzer lights a cigarette with complete composure. Then, as he vigorously waves the used match back and forth, as if trying to erase something written in the air, he says, Bang looks out the window. He torments his blond mustache with his small lower front teeth. Pause. Hermann Holzer is pacing again, smoking with incredible intensity. Suddenly he stops, and his voice pierces through the smoke. Color, dear Bang. Red or green? What's going on? Ernst Bang comes closer, and his hand looks ridiculously delicate on the other's calm, round shoulder. He examines his shoes, his left one in particular, and says, I'm sure you won't misunderstand me, Hermann. Holzer grows restless. Does it have to be so solemn? Spit it out. Good heavens, I haven't killed anyone. So... Bang raises his eyes, and they are truly heavy with sorrow. Or have you? Holzer laughs. Then Ernst Bang steps back to the window, and there is again space for the pitiful homesickness song. Right into the small, anxious melody, Bang scatters the slow words. Don't take it amiss, Hermann, but you are breaking them. Pause. Hermann Holzer takes the cigarette from his mouth and gently places it on the edge of the table. The fine smoke rises steeply in the middle of the room. Involuntarily, both follow this calm, solemn movement with their gaze. Then Holzer takes a chair in his hands and tries to lift it. Suddenly, he drops it and shouts into the clatter. Are you mad? Let's talk about it calmly, please. Bang's voice trembles slightly, but Holzer isn't there yet. I am breaking her, he repeats emphatically, as if he had to memorize these words. He starts over and over. I am Hermann? The other pleads. I am And Holzer suddenly laughs unrestrainedly. It must be heard throughout the house. Finally, his laughter subsides, and he says with difficulty, with his last breath, Perhaps you'd like to explain? Bang had been waiting for that. He begins softly, as if well prepared. One cannot see his eyes. You remember how you met Helene? It was at my place on one of those lively evenings. That is, for you it was lively. For Helene and me, it was a farewell, if you will, a farewell party. But, well then, something melancholic in any case. You didn't notice that? I know. In the end, we both probably didn't even know it ourselves. That's how it goes. Life is fast. Holzer makes a gesture of impatience. Just a moment, Hermann. It's necessary to talk about that evening. On that evening, Bang takes a few steps closer and tries to hold Holzer's restless gaze. You never asked me how I actually came to be with Helene. Holzer evades him, irritated. But that's none of my business. Bang smiles. Perhaps I'd like to continue telling you anyway. Holzer throws himself onto the sofa so that the springs creak. The screeching discord hangs in the air for a while. Ernst Bang again immerses himself in the contemplation of his left shoe and recount. So, on that evening, I invited you all over to celebrate a kind of engagement. The sofa springs become restless. It had become clear to me that what bound me to Helene was something other than mere camaraderie. So I consulted with myself and decided to marry her. I did not overlook the difficulties my family would cause me. I did not forget that I was limiting my career with this step. I accounted for these things, so they were no obstacle. But at the last moment, half an hour before you entered my place then, a jolt in the sofa cushions. Bang looks over, but Holzer lies quite still, and Bang therefore concludes. Then an obstacle appeared that I had not expected. Pause. Well, and when you came, I already knew, and Helene.
Versailles.
Suddenly Herman sits upright and turns his lurking eyes towards the speaker. She rejected you?
Hmm.
Ernst Bang says uncertainly, as if he wanted to add something, and thinks. Perhaps Bay should open the window, just for a while. Meanwhile, dusk falls upon the two. Only now does Bang light a cigarette and pace up and down, quite differently from Herman. Slowly, in a certain anticipation, swaying. He feels particularly relieved, apparently, for later he says lightly, September. How soon it gets dark. Indeed, it is quite dark. One can only with difficulty discern that Holzer is sitting on the edge of the sofa, his head in his hands. He does not change this position, and therefore his words sound so muffled in the question. That's not clear to me, Bang. What all this has to do with me. What I'm supposed to do with it. Ernst Bang stops. Then the silence suddenly becomes heavy. Heavy. Holzer tears his hands from his face and shout, I'm breaking her? Why? Quiet, quiet. Bang soothes, but Holzer jumps up. He suddenly acts like someone who was paralyzed in a dream. He stretches his arms, he tests his joints and wants to hear his voice. Why? Just look at her, Herman. Bang pleads, himself a little carried away. How pale she is. She'll get sick on you, you'll see. You're tormenting her. Then Holzer places his hand on his shoulder, and it becomes heavier and heavier during these words. You don't know what you say, Bang. I do everything I can for Helene, you know. Everything possible. I just don't make any empty promises. She doesn't want that either. So, why am I tormenting her? Bang has nothing to say in return, and slowly Holzer continues. We are comrades simple. That's how it should be. If I have sometimes neglected her lately, it was the work that was to blame. As soon as she has her child, her work, she will neglect me too. That's how it is. Pause. Ernst Bang has let his cigarette go out. He nervously buttons his black evening coat. His hands are very white. Then Holzer's voice is heard again. It becomes calmer and takes on an increasingly cheerful superiority. By the way, I don't think she looks bad at all. All girls look like that around this time. It will get better. You can count on that. Pause. But that's your way. Sensation at any price. Nothing calm. All trapeze feelings, and an always waits to see if they won't break their necks in the next moment. I know that. But Bun always falls for your sentimentality. Things might not be that simple after out. Bang says this almost whistling. Of course, because you don't want them to be simple. Oh, want, Bang says in general. Want. And he looks past everything into the boundless. Well, there we are happily again. Holzer is almost cheerful now. He lights the lamp and then bows to his friend. Your Excellency, permit me. My name is Holzer. This is to be taken literally. My late father was old Holzer. You can hear about him in the village down there. Most will remember the broad farmer, the Holzerbauer. And I still have something of his blood, I hope. Something straight, oak-like. Ernst Bang feels disturbed by the bright yellow light of the lamp. I think I'll go now. Holzer laughs. As you wish. But so that the lesson has an end in God's name, tell me quickly what I, in your opinion, should do in this case. Bang makes a gesture, as if to dismiss everything. Speak. Da culture is behind you. Consider. And he takes the hat from the hesitant man's hand again and appeases, in a different tone. Really, Ernst, friend to friend, you have told me your opinion, and, however strange it may be, I am grateful to you for it. Without a doubt, you have also brought some advice, a medicine against the dangerous evil, eh? You are doctors, you modern people. Bang tries to smile. I'm curious. What should I do, Ernst? What should I say? And then Bang becomes very serious again. He takes a few steps back and answers very hastily. Say? I think it's your business to just listen. Herman doesn't laugh anymore either. I don't understand you. Well, Helene is one of those who have to speak out at all costs. Pause. It could be that Helene has something to tell you from earlier. Pause. So Holzer then says curtly and escorts the other to the door. Then Helene enters, directly facing the two of them. Oh, she says as she recognizes Ernst Bang, and Holzer laughs. A surprise, eh? Old friend? Yes, Helene tries and walks past Bang. Then Herman has an idea, quite suddenly it seems. You still have time, don't you? Actually, that sounds quite decisive for a question. Bang involuntarily stops. He sees Herman take the girl by the hand and pull her into the bright circle of the lamp, and it strikes him as incredibly brutal. Then he hears him say, Pale? Are you pale, Helene? Pause. It's possible the lamp is doing that. It's an unfavorable light. But you feel well, don't you? Pause. This gentleman here says, you see. Helene makes a movement as if she wants to flee. Ernst Bang suddenly feels completely uninvolved, a spectator. He wants to sit comfortably so as not to miss any of what is to come, so. This gentleman says, I'm breaking you? Pause. Ernst Bang thinks, this scene is too slow. Faster, please. A pause. Then, very loudly, is that true? Violent weeping. Ernst Bang takes 2 steps. He has the feeling. It's over. One can leave. Nothing more will come. But that's a mistake. Something else is coming. Herman Holzer's giant laugh. And afterwards, your children, real children, both of you. You, Helen, and him. Thank God we're together now, otherwise you'd each do something sentimental. I can see it in you. We'll stay together today and celebrate something. We'll find something. A pause. Helene leans towards Herman with half-dried eyes and whispers something to him. He doesn't understand at first. Then he laughs. Just the 2 of us? God forbid! Childish! On the contrary, what I have to say now, Ernst must hear. Just put your hat away, my dear. And as Bang makes no move, Holzer adds, if I ask you to. And since that also doesn't help, he uses a last resort. Helen wants it too, right? And then a silence falls around a small, colorless yes. Ernst Bang slowly approaches. He looks incredibly tired, and Holzer thinks, to reassure himself, it's an unfavorable light, such a lamp. Then he pulls the girl onto his lap and jokes. Well, little wife, do you love me? And am I not breaking you? The little blonde girl clings to his neck with an impetuosity that amazes him. For a while he feels her crying. But those couldn't have been deep tears, for when he forces her delicate face upwards, a radiant bliss breathes upon him, which he cannot recall ever having known. Bang suddenly stands at the window and counts the black chimneys. He wants to occupy himself outside at any cost. Nevertheless, he hears word for word, it'll be over soon, child. If news comes from Holmes today, we can get married right after the exam. Pause. You want to, don't you? A blissful laugh. So today we celebrate the future. Pause. You're with us, Bang, aren't you? And he doesn't even wait for the answer. We're celebrating Bane more thing, right? Your culture, Bang. We are three modern people. Three people without prejudice, aren't we? We hereby decree there is no past. We simply deny the past. Ernst Bang has quickly approached, as if to save. He still hears. Whoever speaks of the past lies. Agreed. Helene is very pale. Hermann hasn't noticed. Someone has just rung the doorbell outside, and he hurries to open it. It could be from Holmes. Helene reaches him at the door. Her lips are burning. It's a last attempt. But Holzer covers his ears and laughs loudly. Then she lets him go, and slowly returns to the lamp, quite calm. Bang stands on the other side of the table, and the lamp sings remarkably loudly between them. Helene looks at him once with sad, helpless eyes. And Ernst Bang shrugs a little, imperceptibly. That's all. The last ones. The day grows increasingly embarrassed in the small rented apartment where such heavy, incomprehensible furniture stands. But the twilight understands everything. It knows that what remains in chairs and cupboards and pictures is the past, and that the narrow rooms 3 flights up are innocent of this strange past, like people whose faces have inherited from some ancestor the name of a feeling that their own weaker hearts could not possibly bear. The 2 windows let in the red evening, which comes over the rooftops and quietly approaches the waiting things, which receive it silently. Most joyfully, the narrow chest of drawers, adorned with columns, which is like a small altar, embraces it. With all the silver and glass on it, it smiles at him, bare. Marie Holzer stands directly in front of this chest of drawers. She takes ud after another of the small miniatures, which are placed there next to the massive candelabras, into the evening light, and examines each one carefully. Her young, bright face is serious and thoughtful. For a while she turns it to a lady in black, who sits near her by the window and gazes ahead, without her large eyes hold at anything. And so Marie Holzer can calmly look at her, as if this too were a picture. This face, whose age it dares not guess, although it is not young, this delicate mouth, moved by painful memories, overcoming an invisible suffering, and this hair, which unbelieves to know is heavy. And above us, the nobility of this delicate, quiet figure, the patient calm of these black shoulder, on which the simple, utilitarian dress lies like a dignity. Now the slender clock, almost hidden between the windows, raises its trembling voice and solemnly strikes 6, each chime emphasized differently. Marie Holzer lets it finish completely, and even waits for the sound with which the divided silence closes again after the last strike. Then she says, "Strange," and picks up another picture from the dresser and repeats, "Strange." The woman at the window is startled. "Did you say something, Marie?" The girl first places the miniature back in its old spot before answering. "Said? Not really. It's just so peculiar." The lady glances briefly at the evening sky and asks softly, "What is it, child? That it always changes so much here with you, so peculiarly devout. One always feels as if it's the very first time here. One can't unlearn to marvel." Pause. She bends her arms back high in a girlish manner and cradles her head, as Sen might do during a gentle dream that enjoys deeply, with all its senses. Her eyes are also closed as she continues. "And this exists here, in the middle of the city, high up in this noisy, everyday apartment building where sober, unimportant people live, that above them is this strangeness. They carry it, as it were, on their heads and suspect nothing of it." She lets her arms fall. "No, you see, Mrs. Malcorn, that such a thing exists." "But what exactly, child?" "All of it, these pictures and these things, and you, Mrs. Malcorn, and Harold, yes, Harold too." Mrs. Malcorn gently shakes her head. Are lonely people so different from lonely people? Yes, perhaps, but that's not it alone. Marie Holzer goes to the other window. And then, you're not lonely, really. You live among many, just not among us, not among us today. You have so many pictures here. You've often told me who all these people were, all these sad women and these solemn gentlemen. And I also know that they have long been dead, some 200 years ago, some even earlier, died in peace. But do you really know that these are just pictures? As if disturbed by the quiet fear that this girl's question chases before it, Mrs. Malcorn stands up and comes to Marie. And while she places one hand on Marie's shoulder, Marie gently strokes the other hand. You are so delicate, so pale, as if many people were living through your life. Pause. All these, one can barely discern the timid movement with which Marie points into the room. It has grown so dark, and into the silence the storm from outside casts itself. But then Marie Holzer begins loudly and in a different tone. You must take care of yourself, Mrs. Malcorn. Oh, forgive me if I speak like this. I sometimes feel older, like your older sister. And yet so young? Mrs. Malcorn smiles and kisses her on the forehead. Yes, I am young, and I am glad of it. I feel so much strength within me. I want to do so many things, and there is an impatience in her hands, as if she wanted to immediately apply them to a becoming that moves too slowly. At this, Mrs. Malcorn remembers. Harold always said that too. I have so much strength within me. He did. That's what brought us together, drove us together. This feeling of strength. And Marie recounts breathlessly. Right then, and I first heard him speak, at the meeting, many had spoken before him. I remember. It was about the organization of a relief society to support the incapacitated, their wives and children. Thought others had discussed the matter so dryly and from above. You could tell they were well fed and knew worries only by hearsay. One had grown tired of it. Then he came. It was like a storm, like an awakening by firelight. It was no longer about providing for these few poor people. It was as if space should be made for a new generation, right among us, ruthless. Marie Holzer takes a deep breath and makes a gesture, as if placing something in the darkness, a target for her bright, blissful eyes. Oh, Mr. Is Malcorn, I always see him that way. He had grown tall, tall, and his voice hung over the indecisive like a sword. You of little faith, he cried, you of little faith. And then his faith came over me, this faith of a child or a martyr. He had raised his hands, and it was as if he held something into the hall that blinded us. Our shadows were suddenly heavy, fell away from us, and we stood there. Light from his light, heart from his heart. Amidst her overwhelming joy, Marie searches for something to say, not noticing how Mr. E. Malcorn hides her listening face in her hands. Finally, she continues her story. And then, as everyone was leaving, I pushed my way through, with my elbows, with my fists, however it came. I would have strangled anyone who tried to stop me. To him. He didn't look tired at all, just calmer, darker. I couldn't say anything, not a single syllable. I had tears in my throat. I felt dizzy. I reached out to him vaguely. He took my hand and warmed it in both of his, and held it, and asked, You want to help me? Then, all at once, I could cry. I had never been able to before, not even when my mother died. But then, and it felt so good. Here, a violent sob interrupts her. She becomes almost motherly as she approaches the crying woman, gently puts her arm around her trembling shoulders, and asks, But this is a joy, Mr. Malcorn, isn't it? She feels the other woman make an affirmative movement. So, you see, but also a fear, and Mr. Malcorn calms her tears. How so? He was never like this before. He used to be with me a lot. He used to like being at home. Yes, you see, Marie says quickly in her broader voice. You must be generous. He has riches for many. Everyone needs something from him. He is the soul of everything. Do you understand that? Yes, says Mistress Malcorn, as punished children say yes. He is richer than as of us. He takes nothing from you, even if he gives gifts to 100 others. Do you feel that? The same, yes. He is a king, but he avoids me. And despite Marie's dismissive gesture, the delicate woman insists. Yes, 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 he avoids me, Marie. Me in this room and everything. But dear, Mistress Malcorn presses her face against the girl's strong, agitated chest and lament, as if ashamed of herself. Oh, why does he hate me? For heaven's sake, Mistress Malcorn, you're committing a sin. Do you know how Harold speaks of you? Like a dream, like a fairy tale, the most beautiful fairy tale and heard as a child, and finds again in everything beautiful, always and always. Marie's voice is very soft now, very gentle. Really, Mrs. Malcorn hesitantly lifts her tear-filled eyes. Like a jewel kept in the safest place, like a holiday.
Oh, more, more. I've loved you so much, Mrs. Malcorn, long before Harold led me to you, long before I knew you. Where else would that have come from?
Impatient and happy, the delicate woman asks, What did he tell you about me? Oh, everything. About his childhood, what the days were like, and what you read to him in the evening, and what dress you wore to church.
The black eye with the lace insert, yes?
Exactly that. Often on the way, he would start talking about it. So unexpectedly. And his voice was completely different then, warmer. Isn't it true? His voice can become strange? Yes, as if it came from far away. Pause. You see, Marie, once Harold was like that voice, before that thing took coat of him, that strange, new, restless thing that I don't understand. Before he became a man, Mrs. Malcorn. Before he took on a profession, a duty. Before he leaped into life, Mrs. Malcorn. Yes, Mrs. Malcorn nods sadly into life. Oh, don't fear for him. He is one who can handle life. It's no danger to him. He has put it on like a cloak, like a purple robe. Life? The other asks, surprised. Modern life, yes. This impetuous, hourly becoming, this haste of a spring storm. Ah, heavens and nud day. Oh, you wouldn't believe how much you love it once you're in the thick of it. How it had you feel with it. Do you know that through yourself, Marie? Yes, Mrs. Malcorn, I belong to it entirely. Fate threw me right into it. Early on, when my mother died. Fate and longing. Longing for what? For power. Power? Yes, over oneself and over suffering. Pause. You loved your mother? Oh, yes. But we were very poor. We never had time to tell each other. I don't think she ever knew. Pause. And Marie Holzer feels an anxiety coming and says quickly, like someone who has promised never to be sad, But shouldn't we light the lamp? Yes, please, Marie. Besides, Harold should be back by now. Oh, you know how it goes. But it's 6:30. Marie has lit the lamp on the dresser in the back and brings it to the sofa table where they usually sit in the evenings. He'll have met someone, she reassures, and her face, leaning over the lamp, shows that she is not worried. Or he's getting something else from the library. She is glad to have found another explanation for his absence. But Mrs. Malcorn understands it differently. These books, she complains, these many big books. Marie laughs. Yes, that's his old passion. And he reads so long, every night until 1 or 2. He lives 2 lives, one forward and one deep back into the past. That makes him so broad. Mrs. Malcorn, still not entering the circle of light from the lamp, stands somewhere in the dark, among the objects. She doesn't seem to have heard the last explanation. I often creep to the door and look through the crack, still light. I don't dare to call, but I always listen. Yes, yes, he likes to read aloud, Marie says superficially, drawing the window curtains and thus completing the evening. And the circle of the lamp becomes calm and round. But then Mrs. Malcorn whispers, as if it were a secret. He's coughing. Well, says Holzer, the weather's like that too. No, not like that. For a long time and so terribly deep. Then Marie is also startled, unnerved. Only for a moment, of course. Then she shakes it off. Oh, Mrs. Malcorn, always seeing everything from the blackest side. She realizes that something humorous must be said quickly, at odd costs. If you just had to speak in front of 500 or 600 people in a hot, misty hall for 2 or 3 hours, Mrs. Malcorn ventures into the light. Do you really think so, Marie? Of course, Mrs. Malcorn. Just think. But so that you can be completely at ease, I'll persuade him to go to the doctor. How good. Yes, for your peace of mind. It won't be an easy task with him. God knows. He's so reluctant to take time for himself. But I think I can risk something with him. He does everything you want, Marie. Oh, we're good comrades. That balances out. Besides, he's so far above me in everything. Pause. I'm often quite anxious because of that. Anxious? He feels everything so intensely. Often when we are among people, a word, a glance, a movement somewhere, I hardly notice it, but I see it in him immediately. Something has happened. This word, this glance, this gesture was an event, something decisive. What do you mean by that, Marie? Well, that's self-evident. He is mature. He has centuries of development behind him. Beneath him are generals, bishops, perhaps even kings, always Ed on the shoulder of the other, and at the very top, he, Harold. And all the slightest fluctuations of this broad base are visible in him. Then Marie Holzer speaks of herself, in a completely different tone, almost rough. My grandfather was a farmer. And now she forgets our reverence and continues, even though the clock strikes 7 times, hastily as if she could only be happy once everything is said. I am so yesterday. I am closer to the earth, to the clay, I mean, to the raw material. I am younger, younger in culture. I have health and strength, but my health boasts. My strength is showy and full of selfishness. It wants to go up. It still has to go up. Yes, yes, that's it. Harold can help others. He really can lift others. He is above. He was always above. His help is ripe, effortless, beautiful. But Mrs. Malcorn quickly stands up and walks past Marie and all the words. She has known for a while that Harold is coming, and now Marie also hears his approaching footsteps. Good evening, Mamma. It's late, isn't it? Good evening, Marie. You've been waiting, haven't you? Yes. There were a lot of unforeseen things again. Harold says all this quickly, and his voice wavers as he walks. He lifts himself out of his mother's dark embrace and hands Marie a leather folder. Take it, Marie. We have to go through this today. It's about the submissions, well, you'll see. Suddenly Harold notices that he is standing and allowing his mother to take the wet coat from his shoulder. He makes a startled movement, as if to protect her delicate hands. Is it raining? Asks Mrs. Malcorn worriedly. It's fog, dreadful, thick fog. You can't see T steps in front of you. It settles into your clothes and onto your lungs. If only the autumn days were over again. Marie Holzer has meanwhile quickly scanned the contents of the folder. She turns her calm, intelligent eyes to Harold. Did you speak today? Yes, at the Student Association. Well, and? What? How was it? Harold looks at his shivering hands. Well, as always, you know. Have you been here long? Mrs. Malcorn hurries to participate. I was so glad to have her here. I was already worried about you, Harold. Yes, Mamma, you know. I am not master of my time. Harold's voice and movements still have the demons of the hall, and it is difficult for him to adapt them to the small room. Therefore, he turns to Marie. But shouldn't we go through this right away? Holzer notices Harold's mother's disappointment and tries to hold him back. No, Harold, now I just want to see you again, you know? If you put your eyes back into those terrible papers, they'll be lost to me for today. And I have a right to them too, don't I? Yes. Yes, Marie. And Harold feels as if something had been devised to torment him. You all have a right to me, I know. All os. Mrs. Malcorn is very frightened. Come, sit by the stove. You must be completely chilled. Yes, yes, by the stove, always sit by the stove, behind the stove if possible. But suddenly Harold approaches his mother, completely ashamed. Mamma, forgive me. You see, there's that malicious anger in me again that hasn't come out yet. Marie knows that means nothing, right? It just comes with it. And here, God knows, it shouldn't come out, not here. He gently leads Mrs. Malcorn to her favorite spot by the lamp, and his voice finds an unexpected tenderness. Your eyes are at red, Mamma. Truly, your eyes are at red. Haven't you worked too much for me? What? That terrible red in your embroidery. Yes, does it have to be this red, this bloody red? What will it be anyway? Mrs. Malcorn can't believe such happiness. A table runner, she says softly, her voice trembling with emotion. I see, Harold says, already distant again, filled with something completely alien, and turns to Marie. It's important that we get this done today. So much is coming now. As if it wouldn't be day in hearts now, like outside. So much misery everywhere. Physical misery, hardship, poverty, illness. Spiritual misery, arrogance, prejudice, and selfishness. And to all of it, the persistence in it, the sluggishness, the terrible, dull, incurable sluggishness. This great yoke of yesterday, in which they all walk. They have their sufferings and their joys, insignificant, hateful pains, and a fearful, false, anxious happiness. But they stick with it. Try to lift them out. They resist. And if you simply tear them away from their miserable habit, they are like outcasts and want to return to the plague-ridden hut of their past. All in vain. And after a helpless pause, and yet unhas this honest will, this reverent strength, which does not want to rule, which is ready to serve and does not shy away from the smallest, slightest work, if it only lies on the path forward. You know, Marie, how well, how gladly I am convinced of the goal, don't you? You know from what depth all this comes to me. You yourself once felt it, didn't you? My dear, I feel it anew every day. And you believe in me, as I believe in the sun. Harold gratefully took her hand and asked, Does that mean believing in blossoms or fruits? Sue. One after the other. Harold. One after the other? That takes time, Marie, a lot of time. We are young and patience. You have that. Are you so sure? Because you have love, Harold. Both fell silent, until Harold, as if relieved, breathed out. Thank you. And immediately after he tried to be cheerful again. So, you... Mamma, tell me, may I see the runner, your work? Mrs. Malcorn smiled, about to refuse. But now the runner was brought, and slowly unrolled under the lamp. Oh, oh, Harold exclaimed, even before he had fully opened the embroidery. Look, Marie, we talk and talk so much, but if we had to show what we've done, we'd probably be embarrassed. And here, little mother, she does something like this in complete silence, without a word, something so magnificent, and it's just a runner, just a runner. How mistaken that can be. I would have taken that for something much more festive. Marie was curious. For example, oh, for a dress. A dress, the Holzer woman laughed exuberantly. Do people wear such dresses where you're from? Harold looked up. Where I'm from? Where I'm from? How strange that sounds. Where I'm from. I think it's the first time I've uttered these words side by side. It's like an invention, and yet so simple. Just like gun inventions, by God, among people and now, constructed quite analogously, with me. With me. Yes, but what was I going to say? What were we talking about? And he remembered his tenderness. Yes, and why are you embroidering this runner, Mamma? Are we going to have a party? Mrs. Malcorn looked at him sadly, but Marie Holzer knew what to say. Goodness, just celebrate something. You can celebrate anything. The first day of spring and the first snow. Well, and if there's nothing else to find, you just celebrate the runner itself when it's finished, right? But the others seemed not to have heard her cheerful suggestion at all, so serious and quiet were they together. And Harold only asked, lost in thought, "It probably takes a long time to finish such a cover." "If one is diligent," sighed Mrs. Malcorn. But Harold continued in his thoughts. "I," he smiled, "would certainly never completely finish it. I would sit and embroider, and have only very dark, deep colors, in which one gets so lost, and always wander further through the canvas, always deeper into the darkness, as into a forest, and never find the goal. I would be afraid to come to an end." Now Harold was far away from the two people who listened to him, astonished and concerned. They no longer understood him. But he moved further and further away from them. He raised his arms over his closed eyes. "And yet, I have such a longing for celebrations, for a single extraordinary hour, for red and roses, for fragrance and gold, for splendor, for unheard of splendor. One should be blinded by it, see nothing more afterwards, never again, but know it was, and have the feeling of a nameless extravagance. It sometimes comes over me to send people away. Go home, everyone. Put on your best clothes. Take everything you have in your chests, from your grandparents, the warm-scented scarves, and the heavy, intricate brooches that are like golden knots, and the flowers you grow in pots outside your windows. Use them for once. Put them in your children's hands so they learn to smile. And then, come back. Come back, everyone." But Harold's hands fell dejectedly from his beautiful, dreamy, welcoming gesture, and he continued in a tired, disappointed voice. "And if they really came back, all of them, in their tasteless Sunday masquerade, with their too short trousers and their stiff creased shawls that smell of camphor, then we would have nothing to say to each other, and behave like strange children who are suddenly supposed to play together." Pause. And since he adds nothing, Marie Holzer, unaccustomed to silence, exclaims, "First you speak like a king, and then like a poet. And I am neither." Harold has woken up. There were kings in our lineage, weren't there, Mamma? The legend goes, in long lost times, 1,000 years ago, perhaps. Marie closes her eyes as if on a high, railingless tower. 1,000 years? Yes. When you say our name, softly, the old name still echoes in it, dull, dark, like the bells of a sunken church. And Harold continues as if in the middle of a story. Then a great wave crashed over the king's throne and swept the last and into deep oblivion. There his descendants remain, valley children. But much later, in the Middle Ages, one of them again comes to power and land. Isn't that right, Mamma? In another realm, with a darkened name and only as a small dependent king. After him they stay on top for a while and appear again in history, at the time of the 30 Years' War. but they quickly grow weary in petty squabbles and hostile disputes and, powerless, let go of the old name. And it falls long back to the old pagan kings, and I just stepped into a namelessness. No one says anything. Only the clock speaks of it, in its gentle, old-fashioned way. At the eighth stroke, Harold remembers something. Like a poet. Who said that? You, Marie? But you're not the first. Long before you, a voice spoke it, deep within me. Poet, I can't help it, you know? It was there, where it can't reach. In that darkness, where another has power. It was to be an artist, to be young. As if that were the same, no? And suddenly it breaks through his will. Would you like me to be an artist? Pause. Tell me, Mama. Would you then stay with me at home? Who knows? I can't talk about it. Perhaps. Perhaps then has everything within oneself. Perhaps there is then nothing that in does not have within oneself. Perhaps, do you want it, Marie, that you be an artist? I believe you are, Harold. You are mistaken, child. Certainly. You see all of this too brightly. You have so much light within you for everything. I am not. I could have been, perhaps. I could have remained it, although I never was. It's too late. And very agitated, he steps towards Marie. You said earlier that I have love, Marie. Yes, do I have it? Haven't I squandered it, scattered it with full hands? Hasn't that been my life, to waste it, for 2, for 3 years, until this moment? Can I dispose of it, what hundreds cling to it? And if I desire it back from them, what am I to do with this love that bears the marks of 100 convulsive hands, that has become worn out, old, faded, and not after its summer, mind you? Oh ho! I didn't let it ripen at all. I threw these green fruits to the hungry. Here, 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 and they couldn't get full or healthy from it. Why would you come to offer me your hand then, Marie? Then there was still time. Then I could still have saved and spared. I don't want to accuse you, no, only you must not call me artist. That's like a mockery, and you do it. And then he begins to cough softly, so that Mrs. Malcorn's eyes become rigid and anxious. But Marie Holzer pays no attention now. She feels obliged to answer. You are agitated, Harold. You have no right to speak like that. You have gone through victories. You must not become fickle. You knew what you wanted. Must I remind you? She lets Harold's defensive gesture dictate nothing to her. I thank you for everything, including my confidence. You gave it to me. It is my possession. And if you want it back, not without a fight. Harold feels a cough coming on, so he quickly and harshly says, You use such grand words, Marie. They are your own, which I am giving back to you. All of them, even this, of little faith. Can't you wait for your summer? Not half-ripe fruits. You have sown seeds in 100 places, and so you must wait for 100 harvests. Holzer expects an answer, one that will make everything right again. But Harold only nods. It seems so indifferent to him now. And then he fears the cough that is coming, and his mother keeps looking at him. Then Marie gathers all her strength once more, and her words are warm and candid. Have courage, Harold. You are unfair. Think. You once said, verbatim, I would like to be an artist, but it is not yet time for art. Did I say that? Forgive me then, it sounds almost mocking. But Marie Holzer does not give in. Isn't a life of help tenfold? Don't we have a very proud duty? Doesn't that make us rich? Don't we know our way, Harold? Aren't we victors? Harold, do you believe in us? He must see the hand Marie Holzer extends to him. But nevertheless, he walks past it, goes towards his mother, who awaits him anxiously, and says slowly as he walks, I am tired. And Holzer watches him fall into the armchair, and how the delicate woman, who bends down to him, completely covers him. and she says nothing more. It wouldn't have been heard anyway, for Harold coughs very loudly. Gold? How sad it must be for those who were healthy in winter. In spring comes. How can they understand it if they are not also recovering? Thinks Harold, and he constantly watches the skies, alternately cloudy and clear, rushing past the windows high above the late pre-spring afternoon. He does not look with radiant eyes alone. He looks with his whole face, in which there is nothing hidden. Only under his beard, which wildly overgrows his lips, a small smile stands and blossoms, waiting for a word to carry it to people. But Harold remains silent. Even and Mrs. Malcorn enters, softly, as son comes to the sick and asks, "Alone already? Marie has already left?" He only nods, but then says vaguely, "Look!" With the trained understand of a nurse, Mrs. Malcorn turns to the windows, but notices nothing. And so Harold explains, "The clouds, it's a wondrous sight, and I haven't seen it for so long. Sometimes as a boy, and then not for a long time." And then after a while, he also answers his mother's question. "Marie shouldn't really come anymore. I sent her away. I told her I wanted to sleep. But I was just tired. Tired of seeing her, tired of hearing these old thing again and again. I mean, from those down there. I haven't been with them for half a year now. Half a year! And during all this time, nothing has happened, it seems. At least not what Marie tells. You see, they can't do anything without you. You good soul, they can't do anything with me either. And above Vud, I can't do anything with them, really." And he turns back to the windows as if nothing were as important now as this bright moving sky. "I didn't see all this before, and there's so much. I don't know, Mama, does being sick make us so attentive to everything and so grateful, almost wise, so involuntarily wise, like a child is? You can't fall out of character." Pause, then softly, "Do you think it's too late?" Mrs. Malcorn adjusts the cushions laid over the back of the armchair. "Too late, Harold, for what? To begin. To begin again right after childhood, as if those 3 years down there had been nothing, or as if they had been a long illness from which I am now slowly returning." He feels a kiss on his forehead and asks, "Not too late?" Mrs. Malcorn shakes her head. Then she kneels beside Harold, and he gently places his fine rested hands on her hair and says, "It won't be hard for me, I think. I'm much closer to everything from childhood than to what came after. I know everything. If only you would test me, all the way back to when you wore a dress all made of lace like pure clouds, spring clouds, and when you often cried, oh, I still remember. And when you played small, soft songs at dusk, do you still know them?" Mrs. Malcorn lowers her forehead deeply, so that Harold's hands glide further through her hair, from places that have warmed beneath them to others that are cool. And again she hears Harold's voice above her. Of course, that was long ago. And yet I feel exactly how it was. As if a gleam glided through the dark hour, a flash, a last smile of things before falling asleep, that was your song. And once, and I came to you very softly, you didn't hear me coming at all. You called me then, Jerome. Strange. Jerome. Even though I am Harold. And father was also named Harold. But you still called me Jerome then, and that fits so well with what you were playing. It was like the song itself. Do you see how much I still remember?" Pause. And then Mrs. Malcorn stands up and forces herself to say, "Will you do something for me, Harold?" "Anything. Let's not go to Skal. Let's stay here." Harold marvels at the pleading tone of these words. "But that was only supposed to happen at your request anyway?" "Yes. You see, there's a large old park by the castle, and anyway, that's why I wrote to Uncle, asking if he wouldn't like to invite us. I hoped you would recover faster there, but Harold quickly interjects. I probably would have asked you for the same thing, Mamma, today or tomorrow. At first it seemed like a great joy and freedom, but I prefer our rooms here. Now, during my illness, they've become so dear to me, and I actually know them very little. I was so rarely home. Back then, of course we'll stay. Helpless and tormented, Mrs. Malcorn begins again. And you don't even ask why I made this plan? You'll have your reasons, little mother, and I almost believe I can guess them. I know you. It goes against you to accept a favor from Uncle, you proud wood. But with that he forces Mrs. Malcorn to speak, and blindly, beside herself with shame, she blurts out, No, Harold, I cannot lie to you. I must tell you it's not out of pride, out of fear. Fear. Yes. Of the White Lady, Harold doesn't understand yet. Fear of Frau Walpurga? But my brave little mamma and fear. Mrs. Malcorn tries to smile, but most of that she wants to escape her son's gaze. His eyes look so large, and she always remains within their circle, accessible to their gentle glow, no matter how she wanders among things. Finally, she crouches before the stove, as if it were urgently necessary to keep the fire going. And so, from this refuge, kneeling, her face lowered in the hot glow of the stoked embers, she begins a whispered conversation. Do you remember the legend of Frau Walpurga? Roughly. She has been seen in various castles? Yes, most often in Skal. Really? Always 3 days before someone dies, right? Yes. So they say. And according to the Chronicle, it has come true 5 or 6 times. But if Fun considers that Frau Walpurga flourished around the mid-16th century and has only bothered to appear 5 or 6 times since then, one must assume that most Malcorns died without her prior appearance, unless they are still alive? And you know nothing else about her? I once knew all of it, as a boy, as a child, but then I should know it now, as I feel childhood as if it were yesterday. Wait. She was the wife of the Count, or were they still Baron then? No, I think we'll look it up later to see if it's correct. And if I'm right, I'd like a reward, yes? Harold searches his memory, and so he doesn't notice that Mrs. Malcorn doesn't jokingly respond to the last question. He straightens up a little in his chair and correctly and confidently quotes the relevant passage. Sigismund Ferdinand, first Austrian Count of Malcorn, Lord of Chacathern and Halpach, etc. Dach, son Ferdinand III, Appel, called the Lame, Christoph. Christoph, later Lord of Sarnkert and Skal, married to Walpurga, Baroness of Indichar. There we have it. You'll see, it's true. Do you want to hear more? I think I now know grandchildren and great-grandchildren right up to the 18th century. No, no, Mrs. Malcorn says hoarsely, warding him off. Well, I think that's enough. I don't understand at all why we're so thoroughly preoccupied with Mrs. Walpurga. If she can't find peace, do you know why? Why she can't find peace? Obviously, like co-white ladies of the world, faithless, sinful, stabbed by an enraged husband. Faithless, sinful, Mrs. Malcorn repeats with such an uncertain voice that Harold looks around in surprise. She is now very close again behind his chair, so close that the wings of her words brush him as she asks, Do you remember your father, Harold? Hardly. He had a thick white beard. He was old. Mrs. Malcorn wants to lay her hand in Harold's hair, but she only lifts it to his shoulder, for her delicate hand is heavy, and at that moment Harold says, He had strangely wild hands. Harold. It's like a scream, but Harold can't see her face. Could you imagine, Harold? He hears behind him, and further, in anxious, strangely empty pauses, that your father, me. Then Harold turns his head after all. Mrs. Malcorn looks past him into the deepening twilight and almost screams that he would have done as Count Christoph? At first Harold doesn't understand. Then he quickly reaches for her hand, which is ice cold, and gently pulls her towards him, and then she suddenly kneels beside him and buries her weeping in his lap, and hears Harold's voice above her, soft, serious, almost solemn. He was an old man. I didn't love him. And then she kisses his startled, gently resisting hands. Harold, however, is already trying to lift her up, and smiles. You see, I'm still too weak for that. That won't work yet. I can't lift you yet. Then, as she has risen lightly, he leans far back as if for happy sleep. His face is motionless. Only under his chin, on his tense, emaciated neck, a small vein flows in leaping waves towards his quiet heart. After a while he takes a deep breath, and Mrs. Malcorn asks, "Are you well?" Harold doesn't open his eyes. Yes. Today it won't come at all in the end, the evening fever. But just rest now. Don't go away. No, I'm always here. And in the silence that follows, twilight descends. Things recede silently from the glow, as if from a church whose doors are closing. They huddle along the walls, warming themselves against each other, and a drowsiness emanates from them, which the clock on the pillar laboriously overcomes. At the last moment, when the hour is about to pass unrecognized, it call out to it, hastily and brightly. That wakes Harold up. "Are you there?" "Yes, darling. Do you need any?" "I don't want to sleep." "Yes, Harold, sleep. That gives strength. I'm too well to sleep. I'm so well. If I sleep, I'll forget it. And I'd like to know that I'm well. We want to talk." Only now does Harold stir. His eyes remain closed, but he stretches his left hand out to the side and asks, "Hand?" And then, when his wish is fulfilled, "That's your hand. If I had to go blind, I would still recognize you by this hand, so I don't have to be afraid, not even of going blind, not even if, but then I'd have to let go of it." Mrs. Malcorn is startled, partly because she immediately understands his then. Involuntarily she withdraws her hand. "Oh!" Harold says, as if he had dropped something made of glass, and an anxious tension is on his face, waiting to hear it clink on the hard floor. But Mrs. Malcorn quickly soothed his fear. "I'm here, Harold." "Yes." And he lets his eyes sleep, and speaks softly, as if not to wake them. "It's a good thing I got sick. Just think, if I hadn't gotten sick, it would have gone on down there forever and ever until... But now I can rebuild my life from the very beginning. Childhood, I was content with that. Was there someone who made it so beautiful for me, so magically beautiful? You'll guess who. She wasn't exactly happy, what call happy. Full of playmates and festivities. I was always alone, or at least alone with you. But it was so deep. I cannot see its beginning. It could have been millennia, and yet then it is again like a single day that is still not over and of which I dream that it should not end. Can you imagine that?" He expects no other answer than silence. Not after he has listened to it for a while, he continues. "It must be hard to imagine. I could hardly have done it myself before, but now it seems quite natural to me. Childhood is a land quite independent of everything, the only land where there are kings. Why go into exile? Why not grow older and wiser in this land? Why get used to what others believe? Does that have more truth than what believes in the first strong trust of a child? I can still remember, then everything had a special meaning, and there were countless many things, and none was more valuable than another. Justice was over them. Each was allowed to seem unique once, was allowed to be fate. A bird that came flying in the night, and now, black and serious, sat on my favorite tree. A summer rain that transformed the garden, so that a green became darkness and gleam. A book, in whose leaves lay a flower, God knows from whom, a pebble of strange, expressive shape. This was as if one knew much more about it than the adults. It seemed as if fun could become happy and great through everything, but also as if fun could die from everything. Then quickly, in a different voice, the question, "It's not too late, didn't you say so?" "It's never too late, Harold." "Never? It could be, for example, if I— Is the doctor really telling the truth? You hear him. He always speaks quite loudly and cheerfully." Now Harold needs his eyes for testimony. He looks fixedly at his mother. "And he doesn't tell you something different outside the door?" Mrs. Malcorn was prepared for this question. Calmly, she endured Harold's gaze, with a soft, secretive reproach on her face. "Forgive me, Mamma, but it could be. I've often seen that before in houses where there were sick people. I sometimes had the opportunity—" "But what are we going to tell Marie?" He says this quite abruptly. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Malcorn wonders. "Well, so she doesn't come back anymore." "Do you mean that seriously?" "Yes. She will have no place in the future I envision. Life is narrow, and I have so much to fit into it. Marie belongs to the other, to the day life that I have forgotten. I don't want to be reminded of it. But she reminds me of the past, even if she doesn't speak of it, by her mere existence. She must go." This sounds determined and ruthless, and Mrs. Malcorn cannot grasp it immediately. A host of questions arise in her for which she finds no expression, and Harold is already ahead with his words again, happy, as if relieved by this resolution. "I'll paint, or perhaps write a book. Childhood and art. So many things have occurred to me in these last weeks, I'll dictate them to you. You needn't fear I'll overwork you. Just a few lines each day, but perfect, beautiful. One day, I might compose a song. Then you must play it. And if I ever decide to build a house, then you must live in it. Of course, that is we, for we shall never part, shall we? Tell me." Mrs. Malcorn smiles distractedly. "You'll get married?" "Married?" "Well, yes, eventually." "Do you think I would have married Marie?" Mrs. Malcorn nods in agreement. "I never thought about it." Quite flustered, Mrs. Malcorn changes the subject. "And what did you want to paint? You didn't say." "Paint? Clouds? You dreamer! Spring clouds! A cloud dress! Your dress! You! I don't have cloud dresses anymore. Then you must have would made—" The delicate woman smiles wistfully. "I only have an old-fashioned white satin dress left from the last ball. Yes, white. Harold plans. I should paint you in white and with flowers. With some hot, red flowers. With flowers that don't exist anywhere with such red ones. Where did I see them? In your runner, with such flowers. Did you invent them yourself?" "Chance," she whispers and blushes deeply. "Strange. Oh, you invent flowers?" And Harold looks at her searchingly, as if her face in its shy, bashful embarrassment should remind him of something. Then he breaks off briefly. "Perhaps it's childish that I speak this way. I've never really tried to paint. But should I therefore never try? Perhaps I am again a beginnin'. It seems to me we once spoke of the Malcorns repeatedly becoming kings, and those who have no people, perhaps those are the true kings. Even in art, you can rise above a people. Perhaps. Perhaps the artist can form their people from aught peoples, can educate them, but I don't want to. I will never want to. I don't want to educate. I don't want success, no success on any side. I simply want beauty." "Yes," says Mrs. Malcorn, as if to herself. "You feel that?" And Harold looks at her almost surprised. "Yes," she repeats more softly, and hardly dares to raise her eyes. And after a short silence she hears him say, "How beautiful you are!" And she shivers, feeling his gaze upon her. And again, How beautiful you are now. With very soft, restrained movements, she stands up and waits until he call. You were never so beautiful. But this time she doesn't recognize his voice, and uncertainly she moves away from him and stands in the dark, as if under the protection of the clock, whose breath beats very close. The way you walk. Young girls walk like that. And she stands between the two windows and listens. And he asks her, what is your name actually? She doesn't move, but thinks. The fever, and feels a great relief, but at the same time she is sad, as if something barely given were being taken from her again. And he says, yes, I never called you by name. I've forgotten it. For a while she hears her heart and then him again. I know now, your name is Edith. And if it is the fever, after aid, she thinks and listens. But what bid those call you, who, who you loved? She hardly knows that she answer, and with a different, young voice, Edel. And he takes the name and caresses it. Idel. Yes, that's what your name must be. Idel. That is white, completely white, but you still have the old dress, the dress from yesterday and the day before yesterday, the black dress, the sick dress. You are not white. You have betrayed your name. You must not deny it any more now. Go, get your white dress. She clings to the black case of the clock. Go, tomorrow. He doesn't listen. What should we wait for? Beauty wants to come upon us, and his words urge her to the door, but she still hesitates. Hurry! Make yourself beautiful and come back soon. Meanwhile, everything here will be festive. All the candles, all the lamps will burn when you return, white noble. And then he makes a movement as if to rise, and she wants to go to him, wants to prevent it, wants to be motherly. But he is already standing there, strong, tall, arms like wings, and laughs at her. And now she obeys and leaves. And blissfully he watches her go and smiles. But the smile doesn't hold on his thin lips. Like the clock stirs, it falls from him, and startled, he covers his empty face with his hands and feels them cold. And he is alone, and the darkness is vast and presses him back into the chair where he silently sinks. So he remains, perhaps for a long time. For when he comes to, it is night. His eyes are unaccustomed to the black, heavy things and wander anxiously in the silence. Suddenly they widen. A door moves and it emerges as if moonlight were walking. And before the window one sees, it is a woman, all white. Then Harold struggles with his gain arms and screams, ugly with fear, hoarsely. Not yet! Walpurg! Someone has made a light. Harold sits disfigured in the pillows, his head still thrust forward, with hands hanging down, and before him stands Mrs. Malcorn, withered, in satin, with gloves. And they look at each other with strange horror in their dead eyes. End.